The first thing I want to do on this set is see about fixing the volume control. So I put an ohm meter on it, and the resistance between the two outside terminals is alright, but when I connect it to the center wiper to either of the ends, I get infinite resistance. Tried spraying some deoxit in there, had no effect. So I'm going to pop this control open, carefully bend back those metal tabs and see what's going on inside. Well, it looks okay inside. There is the wiper. So these two little tabs are what ride on the carbon track, which is down here. So my best guess is that these two little arms are not making good contact with this. These two little contact points here, that's what goes to the center tap. So these ride against that metal ring, and then that rubs against the carbon. So I'm just going to bend these up a little bit, and I'm also going to bend these down a little bit, and then put this back together and see if it makes contact. After a bit of tinkering, I got the center wiper working better, but there's still some dead spots. But now we got another problem. Somewhere along the line while I was working on this, I broke the AC switch. So it's no longer clicking. And when I popped it open, it looked like something broke inside, but I don't know what, where, when, or how that broke. Maybe just some metal fatigue was about ready to let go before I did anything anyways. So I figure with the intermittent wiper contact and the broken AC switch, it's just time to retire this control and try to find a replacement. Might not be so easy though. Here's on the schematic. It's a 1 meg pot. That's straightforward enough, but it's got a tap at 500K for this little network here. Maybe it provides a little bit of like a de-emphasis or emphasis at certain frequencies. Probably not critical. If I just found a 1 meg pot with the appropriate switch and shaft for the knob, it'd be okay. So now the hunt begins. Those of you who have been watching all of my videos may recall that, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 months ago, I got a big box full of vintage TV parts, pretty much all new old stock, including a bunch of controls. So I started looking through these first, because I know there were some TV type controls in here, including even some replacement push-pull power switches. So I was thinking, well, maybe if I need to, I can cobble something together. Some of these CTS controls are what they call universal replacements. Like here's a 1 meg pot right here. No switch on it, but usually you can modify these to attach a switch. And the shafts are what they call universal. So here's that 1 meg control. And what they mean by universal shaft is that it can work on half moon, it can work on knurled, it can work on split, but none of them ideally. You know, it's a possibility, especially if you can retrofit this, pop off the back end, pop this switch on, but of course there's no 500K tap. Well, I keep looking, and imagine my surprise when I dig up this. Okay, it's got a switch, it's push-pull, it's got that split, just like I need. It's got a tap on it. It's even got the right type of mounting collar. But what value is it? It turns out to be a 1 meg pot with a 500K tap, pulse-pull switch. It's identical to the control that I need. So here they are, side by side. And I still can't believe my luck that I actually have this control, and I found it so quickly and painlessly, and it's precisely what I need. Even the same type of wire wrap terminals, everything. It's got to be a factory replacement part. Let's see. No, actually it's a Claristat. It's not a GE part. Huh. Well, maybe GE or other manufacturers use these a whole lot, so Clarostat made an identical replacement. I don't know, but I'm very, very happy to find this. Now, unfortunately, I can't just pop this in and fire the set back up because while I was pondering what to do about this, I started clipping out some old caps in preparation for recapping. So until I replace these guys, I can't actually turn the set back on. Now, I got a bunch of caps on hand, so I figured, well, I'll just go ahead and start clipping these guys out, and I'll have whatever I need here. No, I do not. So I had to place an order with DigiKey, got to wait a few days. The problem turned out to be that there are a number of 1600 and 1000 volt caps. I was not expecting that, like that guy there, 0.01, 1600, 0.015, 1000. I only keep 630 volt caps on hand, so just gonna have to wait. Also, I did have one resistor on hand and one or two caps I did have on hand, so I started doing a little work, but I'm just gonna put this on the side now. Probably take about a week for the parts to get here. Also, I wanted to experiment with how readily can I work on this board without having to remove it, because it's like those fun predictors where all these wires are wrapped around the posts here. But there are openings on the other side of this metal, so it's not a lot of fun because you can't really see what you're doing that readily while you got the soldering iron on one side and a part on the other, and trying to like hold it with needle nose on one side, heat up the other side, pull out the old lead. But it is possible. Here's what I'm talking about. So aside from this bar here, it is pretty open, but you kind of have to look over here and then look over here and then look back over there. If I was just going to replace one or two parts, for sure I would do it this way. But I don't know. I'm still kind of on the fence, because I know if I completely disconnected this and this little board sitting right here on the workbench, it'd be so easy to work on. Get it all cleaned up, all the old parts taken out, all new ones in, all nice and neat. But got to remove all those wires. Oh, and more importantly, the really irritating thing is these controls are soldered directly into the circuit board, and then they're mounted at a right angle in these little twist things here. So to get the board out, not only do I have to remove those wires, but I either have to unsolder the connections going to these controls on the board or undo these twists, which, you know, always runs some risk that they might break off from metal fatigue. And then there's this guy, which is an even more ambitious board to deal with. But it too is open somewhat on the other side, so we'll see. But for now, I'm just going to wire in that control and then wait for my parts to arrive. I removed the original control and just finished wiring in the replacement. It felt a little stiff, so I put a little bit of lithium grease on it and sprayed some deoxit in there too. I imagine contact a little bit dirty after all these years. And although I imagine it'll work just fine, it doesn't feel quite as solid as the controls on the older sets from the 40s. But I guess that's just the way it is. Now, something else that just arrived is my order of a few capacitors and resistors for this set from DigiKey, but for some reason it's in a box about 5 feet long. Doesn't weigh much though. All I can think is that, well, I'll have to double check with my order, but I think I ordered a little bit of heat shrink tubing as well. And all I can figure is that they didn't want to roll it up, so they just packed it in 4-foot lengths, I think I ordered. Otherwise, I don't know why I got a box this big. Yeah, apparently they used this long box just for this heat shrink tubing, which is kinked at the end anyways. I mean, I would have had no problem with it if they folded this up or rolled it up. Whatever. Here are the components that I got from DigiKey. Got some electrolytic caps, a few power resistors I didn't have on hand, and some film caps. Most of these are higher than the usual voltage. For example, This is rated for 1.6 kilovolts, and some of these other are rated for 1.25. This guy. Although the original specs were for 1,000 volts, they didn't really have much at DigiKey, so I just got 1,250. That'll be fine. And these are all Panasonic. They make a pretty good capacitor. As for the electrolytics, I went with Rubicon. They've been recommended to me in the past, but Mouser just doesn't carry them. But it seems like DigiKey has really expanded their selection. I think in favor of Nichicon, which I like, because it gives you, a little freedom of choice. If you want Nichicon, get them from Mouser. If you want Rubicon, go with DigiKey. Otherwise, rather similar. They both make these skinny caps. 105 degrees Celsius, long life, about 5 times normal than the usual capacitor. It's the BXW series, so I think these will work out just fine. Which leaves me with how do I want to go about actually installing them. Well, probably won't surprise most of you that I decided that I will get this board out regardless of how difficult it may be. So I did untwist these little tabs, and I just need to get screws out, and let's see, perhaps I can do this in place without removing the wires just by flipping it over, but I don't know. That seems a little unlikely. Yeah, it's like there's a short wire going to this transformer here, but maybe I can get by with just removing a few of the wires, because some of these are pretty long, and so there should be plenty of slack that I could just take this board, leave it wired in, and flip it over and work on it, or just rotate it 90 degrees. Probably be good enough. So if we get that short wire out of the way, and looks like some of these other wires are kind of hung up on these clips, so if I unmount those and get those unmounted, maybe just that one transformer wire, and I can work on that. And then there's this guy, which I think will be a little bit more challenging. We'll see. Maybe the shield can come off, unmount the screws, and then maybe I can rotate it this way. As I had hoped, all I needed to do was unwrap that one short wire going to the transformer and undo some of these wiring harness thingies, and board tips up completely, so I will not need to remove any more wires to recap this. I'm pretty much done recapping this board and replacing out-of-spec resistors, so now I'm moving my attention over to this. It's horizontal output tube and damper tube. And inside here we've got the flyback, which looks to be in really nice condition. And a high voltage rectifier tube. Well, hiding underneath here there are a few components. For sure I want to replace that cap, and I want to check that resistor. Not too easy to get at though. Screw on this side and one on the other. I've removed those. I tried tipping it back. It looks like there are some metal tabs that go down in there. I think it's supposed to be able to tilt back. But it looks like what I'm going to have to do before I can do that is remove at least one of these wires. I think that's what's holding it down. And hopefully this will swing up and then get at those parts. And I should replace that little cap there too. And ideally, I'd like to remove the rust from this somehow, but it's pretty bad, but that may be a little more work than I want to get into. I don't want to have to unwire everything here and remove the flyback and all that, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Unsoldering that white wire and removing the plate cap off the horizontal output tube definitely did the trick, and I can easily tilt this back. In fact, it just comes right off. Also makes this board a lot easier to work on. I wish I'd realized that sooner, but oh well. Alright, so what do we got under here? Well, there's a few more resistors than I realized, so I definitely want to check all these guys, and I'll just replace that one without even bothering. And that big old ceramic disc cap there, probably still okay. It turned out to be fairly easy to disassemble the whole high voltage cage. That's because the flyback and high voltage rectifier pretty well integrated as one assembly. Just had to disconnect a couple wires, remove a few screws, and it all came apart. So, got the rust off and then put a little clear coat of enamel on it. Now, if you're going to do something like this, be careful because these are supposed to be grounded. Like these screws that go through the chassis into the metal. Down there, that needs to make a solid electrical contact. All these metal surfaces are supposed to be grounded. Same with here. So, need to scrape away or mask this off to make sure that you get metal to metal contact so the whole thing is well grounded. I figured while I've got the flyback out, I might as well inspect the high voltage tube while it's easily accessible. So I popped it out and it turned out to be a 1G3/1B3, but the schematic calls for a 1J3. Well, I looked up the specifications on both and they're darn near identical. Same filament voltage, same filament current, same peak maximum voltage, but this 1J3, 1K3 does drop a little bit more voltage. So probably has a little bit higher internal resistance. This drops around 300 volts under normal operating conditions, and this is like 150. Now, considering there's typically around 18,000 volts, that's like 1% a difference, so not a big deal, but this is what the set originally called for, so why not put one in? I finished recapping the smaller board and replaced a few out-of-tolerance resistors and have reinstalled it. Also finished derusting and reassembled the high voltage cage and horizontal output and damper tube area. So that leaves a little work to do on the yoke. I want to replace that capacitor, and there's a couple resistors in here somewhere that I should check. Yeah, those guys. Very dirty. And then, finally, I move on to this board. Been doing a little exploring on how I might go about doing that, and looks to me like what I'm going to have to do is remove all the screws and pop these shields off. Get that shield off anyways. Bunch of 1/4-inch nuts scattered around, and I'm going to have to remove some, if not all, of these wire wrap posts, and I can finally get this out because it's a lot of stuff that I want to work on and check on this, so I think I really need to extricate it from the chassis so I can really get at everything. It occurred to me that before I tackle the second main circuit board here, I better do another power-up test. So I replaced that one cap in the yoke and the two resistors, and I wired it back in, and I hooked up my little test CRT and hooked up a test speaker, and I'm all ready to go to give this another power-up test. So here goes. Oh, I should also mention that I actually found two new old stock knobs for this set on eBay. Actually, I saw a seller just selling one knob, and I sent him a note asking, by any chance, do you have another one of these? And he said, oh yeah, I have exactly two of them in stock. So here we go. So I have a nice set of knobs now. Tube's lighting up. That's a good sign. So apparently I didn't make any dead shorts while I was screwing around it. Alright. CRT is sprung to life. So just a vertical hold here. Alright. Do we have volume control now? Yes, we do. Cool. picture's looking pretty darn good too. So let this run for a little while, see if any problems crop up. If not, I will move on to doing that second board.